Well, this museum wasn't always here. It was moved here in '83. So it's been here right up 33 years now. But for 6 years prior to that, it was up right here. This was my home in Sefner. This property was homesteaded by my mom and dad in 1927. The old house was here. My dad was killed in an automobile accident. My wife and I, he left it to us in the will. We tore the house down. We built the shop first. You know how the farmers build the barn first. We built the shop first. Lived in a house trailer back here and built the house. And then we acquired the property next door, which was another 16 acres. This was 16 acres over here. And we're traveling in England in '76, the spring of '76, for a 2-race series with 1 week off in between. And we were visiting all the English car museums, and we were quite impressed with the way the English had saved every little thing. And at this one particular moment, I was looking in this glass case, and it had the fingernail clippers that Sterling Moss clipped his nails with just before he won the big Italian race, the Mia Mia or something like that. And it kind of struck me as cute. And I have lots of stuff, you know. My dad told me don't ever throw away anything, because as soon as you throw it away, you'll need it. And 2 times I threw away stuff, and both times I needed it. So I just casually said, we ought to have a drag racing museum. And my English guide, Les Brooks, who's dead now, said, why don't you build one? Just like if I decided I wanted to, I could just go build one. And so on the flight back, my wife and I talked about it. And we had about 15 of my cars in storage. And of course, lots of artifacts. In '76, I was starting to get a few antique cars. And I never did like to sell my cars because they always had tricks on them. They were way ahead of their time. There was a guy could buy my car and run it for 2 or 3 years and still be current. And if it was a real good one, then I'd have to be competed against that. And the proof of it is, you go in there, you see Swamp Rat 34, built in 1993. They're just now starting to realize they need canopies. And they still haven't got it about the mono wing. When was the last time you saw an airliner with struts going up for that rear rudder section? Say, it's a single deal, just like, and it acts like it's the rudder. So I have sold a few cars, but mostly they were for manufacturers to display, and I always had a right of refusal if they were going to sell them. So we formed a nonprofit organization. We built us a building over here, 12,000 square feet. And we started contacting the people who had these cars. Wins, Schieffer, Hearst, Chrysler, and started retrieving them. And we put them in there, we cleaned them up, and mostly all static displays. At that point, we weren't trying to make them run. And we manicured the grounds, we landscaped it, and we didn't have any visitors. A lot of people came, but they were writers and photographers and other racers and my sponsors and my friends and relatives. They all came, and we stopped everything and toured them through it, and it was all in a building the size of this one room right here. And one morning my wife said to me, honey, what are we going to do with that white elephant when you can't race anymore? This was in 1982. And she was a comptroller. She knew the money, how it was coming in and going. She was always a comptroller. She quit her job in 1956 and came answered the phone in the garage when me and my brother opened our garage in Tampa, Don's garage. She took all the work in, took all the money, put it in the bank, wrote all the checks, never wrote a bad check, never had the bank mess up on a check, Got pretty low a couple of times. You can look in that case in there and you'll see the Marine Bank $2 and something balance. I mean, that's all there was. Of course, I understand that was a lot of money. $4 bought groceries for a whole week for two. You know, gas was 15 cents a gallon. Anyway, she was a comptroller until she walked through that door in 2006. I was out on the lathe and she hollered across the room. She says, "Honey, would you come help me turn this computer on?" And I shut the machine down. I thought that was kind of strange because she'd been to computer school. I knew about it, but not much, you know. I went in there and just pushed the button, the screen come up, and she said, "How did you do that?" It really scared me. That was the first I knew she had Parkinson's. And she died February 2nd, 2014. So anyway, I said to her, I always thought we'd move it to the interstate someday. She said, "You'd leave this property that your mom and dad left you?" He said, "Your little swing is still out there under the tree. This is a lake back here, old lake frontage. We had a Chrysler ski boat they'd given me in '66 when I won the Nationals. You'll see it at the end of the tour. I still have it. I try not to get rid of anything if I don't have to." So anyway, she always kind of listened to what I said. So we started looking for property, and we was traveling, and we're going up and down the interstate, and we spied a piece down in Brooksville that we liked. It looked pretty good just from the interstate, a big sign on it for sale. But that's all you could tell, was just for sale. Of course, we're driving back and forth, 70 miles an hour. And one morning I got up, I said, "Honey, let's go up there and look at that property. How much money do we have?" You know, like I told you, she was a comptroller. In a few minutes she come back, she said, "We got $80,000 that we could spend without disturbing the racing account, but you have to keep pretty good size because if you have some sort of catastrophic failure," and you see them all the time on TV. Well, we've always had them. Sometimes they were road accidents. I remember one time out north of Savannah, the wheel come off the truck, and we went into 30-foot canal full of water, the truck, trailer, everything. We were lucky to escape with our lives. And in the night, you know how fearful that is, to be down under the water and everything pitch black. Because when we hit the water, the battery tore loose from the mount because of the impact, and everything went dark. And there we were with the water seeping in the windows, and I mean, it's scary. So with $80,000, we head north to look at that property. Thank God he wanted $250,000 for it, and we couldn't afford it. And we buy everything for cash. We don't go to banks and borrow money. We pay as we go. So we look all that day. We get a real estate agent. We tramp around in the woods down there, Lake Panasoski. Are any of you from around here? Okay, it's just 2 exits down. Below, where the Florida Turnpike turns left, where everybody turns to go see the mounts. And we weren't even thinking about that. 75 to 80% of my customers would have never drove by this building had we located down there, and it would have probably failed. But we didn't know that. So now we have to work all day looking, finding nothing. Everything was really high or not adequate. We head home. And I said, "Honey, let's stop in Brooksville, stay here at the Holiday Inn." It's a Days Inn now. And pray about this and see if maybe we're not supposed to be leaving this property. Maybe this is where we're supposed to spend the rest of our lives. I was 50 at the time. And maybe this is it, you know. Maybe the museum's not supposed to be anything important. And we called it the Don Garlits Museum because basically it was just my cars. I had a couple of other cars. A Greek had left me a car, and Tom McEwen had left me a car, but that was about it. It was most basically my stuff. So anyway, we prayed to God about it, asked for some guidance, and apologized for not speaking with him before we started out on this move, and that we'd go again tomorrow and we'd go further north and look. And if it was his will that this museum be moved, he would show us the property. So the next morning we get up, we come north, we come off this ramp out here, and my wife looks over here at this big piece of vacant property. It's about a very big rectangle. And here we come by the ramp, and she just gets giddy. Oh, look at that. Oh, honey, we could put the building right there. She's pointing right about where we are. And we'll put the house up there with those couple of trees. There's a couple of trees on the other end. I said, honey, we don't even see a for sale sign. I said, I see an old man out there training a horse, and that's all I see. So we drive around and we park the 54, the one that's got the 51 front end on it in the antique building. Park right there where that gate is. That's why that gate is right where you see it. And you're going to see some pictures of what the place looked like when we kind of got everything moving. Anyway, I get in the ditch and I walk down the east boundary to the south end in the ditch to get an idea what the size of this land was. We need about 15 acres, and I guessed from the pace and the size that's about what we had. When I got to the south end under a little bush, about like that, there was a sign, a small sign about like this. It just said for sale and a phone number, and you could not see that sign if you're sitting in a car going by. The old man that was leasing the property from the people in Tennessee had placed that sign on the property, but not where anybody would just notice it, as he was probably renting it for just taxes, no telling. See, I went over to Stuckey's, it's now an orange shop, used the payphone. There was no sales yet. Called this lady up, asked her about this piece of property on 475 in the interstate. She said, I got that property. What do you want to know about it? I said, how much is it? That was the first thing. I need to know the price. She said, it's $350,000. I said, that's a little out of our price range, ma'am. She said, it's a big piece of property. I said, it don't look all that big. She said, it's real big, and it's been on the market for 20 years. Come on over to the real estate office. Maybe they'll cut a piece out for you. As I told her, we needed 16 acres. So we go over there to Gus Galloway's real estate, and she brings this great big plat out, lays it on the conference table. And I'm looking at it, I see 475 and I see 484. I said, where's the interstate? She said, it's down the road about 1.5 miles. I said, ma'am, the property I'm talking about touches the interstate and 475. She says, that's 475A. And she says, I have that property too. So she brought the plat out, and here it was, this rectangle, 16 acres, dead on. And here's the part, gentlemen, that will tell you and speak volumes. At the bottom, it was the terms. It was cash, $80,000. We bought it on the spot. 3 months later, we came up here as the old man was moving his stuff, and we were getting things in place. We were walking down the south boundary, and the man came over from that farm next door. He introduced himself as Robert DuPont from the DuPont family. And he said, I understand you bought this farm. He said, I didn't know it was for sale. The neighbor didn't know it was for sale. He said, I'll give you $160,000 for it right now. Probably could have got $250,000 if I wanted. I told Mr. DuPont that was a generous offer, and I appreciated it, but I would never be able to sell this property because God himself gave it to me. It was a personal gift. And to show you just what I mean by that, 1983 March, the Gator Nationals are going on, and we're completely moved here. I'd made 90 trips myself personally, moving the cars and all the equipment up here. I kept half of my crew here working and unloading, and half down there. And I'd go down at night, be home, they'd load it out. I'd sleep, get up 6 o'clock in the morning and drive up here. And that just went on and on for 90 days. And anyway, everything was here. We'd run completely out of money. I'd sold 2 or 3 pieces of property in Tampa to get cash. And right over there, that red apron behind that car, we had 2 sawhorses set up, and me and the boys were building those half walls that you see in this room. Everything we owned was in that room in cars. All the equipment was out here just like you see it. The newest piece of equipment in this building is that 1967 Ocala lathe. All my stuff is from the beginning. Anyway, we're working on that, on carpentry work on that apron, and a car drove in. And the guy got out and he says, "Is this the drag racing museum?" I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "But we're closed." But this door was open because it was March and it was about like it is now, the temperature. And he could see there was cars in there. And he had his wife and 3 kids with him. And he said, "Mr. Garlits, I've come a long ways." He says, "Would you mind if me and the family went in and looked around at the cars?" I said, "No, sir, but it'd be $5 each." "No problem." Shelled out $25 and then they went. March of '84, 1 year later, we cut a ribbon. The signs were on the building. We had a paved road in here. And the mayor was here and the preacher was here. And we had a kind of a little celebration. But the kicker is, between that first family in March of '83 and when we cut the ribbon out there, I had sold 11,000 tickets. And we weren't open.
Wow.
It was meant to be. That year we sold 27,000 in the opening year. And we average about 45,000 people a year. Sometimes it's more if there's a big rain out, like in Daytona or the Gainesville. It's been very, very successful. And as you can see, the expansion. We first put 10,000 square feet on this building. That's when you go through those fire doors on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
Then we added a piece against the interstate for storage. Then we added more office space. Then we built the Quonset hut. Then we built the Don's Garage, the first one. And then we built the big antique building. Then we built this last big Don's Garage, which you're going to get to see everything in there. We have 65,000 feet now of show area. And we're full up. We need more space. Wonderful. But it's a fun job. You know, it's I love hunting this stuff down.
My job ain't
I love working on the cars.
Get one from Trump.
Yeah.
Project.
You'd be happy to help, right?
Yeah.
This is Chris Bumpus. This is my machinist. Came here as a young man, just as a helper. Turned into a Cracker Jack machinist. All of our equipment, we don't have any CC equipment here. Everything you actually do it yourself. Like I said, the Ocala lathe was the newest piece, 1967. The mill's 1964. The bandsaw's 1961. And that welder is 1960. Come on in, gentlemen. Come right on in. Every car in that building has got my name on it. It's welded by that welder. And it still works good today. That company isn't even around. They sold out to Miller.
How does it feel to run an old antique?
This is a current project. This is a 1932 Ford 2-door sedan. This was originally a 4-banger, 4-cylinder, a BMO they called them. And I got it from an old man up in Union City, Indiana. It was kind of a little beat up. It'd been in a couple of wrecks over the years. And Chris took it all apart. We're going to make a really nice driving street rod out of it. We're not going to paint the body. We'll leave the body like it is. But all of the frame's been completely redone and reinforced and straightened. But it's got the 39 Ford transmission in it with the Lincoln gears. And it's got a Banjo Ford rear. We're going to put a 327 Getz gear in that. It's just going to be to drive around on the street. But it's got disc brakes, which is real important, and 12 volts. That way it starts every time and stops every time. This is built for fun. This is Chris keeps all the maintenance up on these buildings. And there's a lot to be done here. And this is kind of something to give him something to do that's fun, you know, instead of just all this drudgery, you know. Well, you know, I worked in maintenance a couple of times in my career, and it's kind of, you know, you just get up every morning, you kind of hate to do it, that you just got to go work on this stuff. You know, this makes life a little more livable. And he's an excellent welder. We put a whole stainless steel exhaust. You can see some of the exhaust that's on the car.
What size is that
We love
nail head
stainless steel.
done?
It's forever. You know, you only put it on
322?
It never gives up. Come on this way, gentlemen.
Check out that ancient Ocala.
Good job.
Good job.
How tight is it? What do you got?
Down that way.
Newer
This way, I mean.
positions. This car is a 1972 AMC. Got 2,400 miles on it from the factory, and it's got a 351 Ford Cleveland engine in it, and that's also new. These parts were given to UCLA for this hydrogen project. This is a roll cage. The car was taken to the drags and raced. It's pretty fast. But if you step around here, you'll be able to see the hydrogen bottles in there. Here's what gets the fuel right there. And only steam comes out of the exhaust pipe. And they won the 1972 Urban Vehicle Design Competition for the cleanest running engine. And after they won it, they put it up. It isn't something that somebody want to drive. You've got those two great big high pressure hydrogen bottles in there, which is really not all that safe. George Barris did all this work, who just recently died. Probably some of you know who that was. Anyway, this thing was stored all that time outside for a while, then in a warehouse. And finally they decided to dispose of it. And they were going to crush it. It just happened there was a young man there in the team that says, you know, it seems like such a shame, says it's a unique vehicle. And it did drag race. Maybe Don Garlits would like it for his museum. So they called me up and I said, sure. They shipped it to me. So we're going to do a little cleanup on it, get maybe some of this rust off of it in places. And it'll be, also they were experimenting with crash bumpers. These are the first crash bumpers that they were trying to figure out how the cars could smack together and take the impacts without hurting the people too bad. So, kind of a fun deal. We'll be working on that. Going out here, this is my touring trailer. When I do shows, I usually take a car that I cackle, and then we have t-shirts and stuff to sell. Come on in the trailer. Placed them by year, and then I gave them to this art design guy, and he made these panels. And then we had a wrap made. This is a wrap. This is one panel. It goes like this. And I had the wrap guy put them up here. And it goes all the way back into my childhood. Have any of you seen my book, Don Garlits and His Cars? Well, they have it up in the gift shop, and I have it at the end of the store shop. In 1934, I moved a dump truck load of bricks from the road to where my dad was going to build the fireplace. Because the dump truck wouldn't come on the property because it was too wet and soggy, and he just dumped them out there. And then my dad came home and was rabid that he put them in the wrong place, and then he got the idea that the boy could move the bricks. And boy, was I excited about that, because I had a little wagon, you know, I always wanted to do things that actually made something. And so, but I could participate in this fireplace. There's a picture of me a day after I had moved those bricks. And my mom was just screaming, "The baby can't do that!" And I kept saying to myself, "Where's the baby?" She was older. I never thought of myself as a baby. I was always a man. And my dad got me another wagon, not a new one, but he had a pedaling route, and people would just, and went through the real nice section of Tampa, and people would put the stuff by the street if they didn't want it. And he'd get real decent toys that way, because they just be sitting out there, you know. The rich people would, the kids had more toys than they could use, and so they didn't wear the stuff out. There's a lot of stuff here. First wing and drag racing, 1963. My wife, when she drove the Super Stock, won a lot of trophies.
Is that the red car inside by chance?
How's that?
Is that red car inside by
that's
chance?
inside.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, inside, yeah.
There you are. There's that terrible accident at Long Beach when I blew my foot off. There's a picture. If you look close, you can see the end of the foot. It was kind of like a cauliflower way it beat it up. The car sitting there after it blew up. Of course, there's the engine car during the testing. And the first big win, this is the NHRA, the final. And look at the pieces going by the guy's head right there. I mean, it speaks volumes why we needed that. Almost didn't do it too, it come real close. I worked for 3 months on the project, never got down the drag strip. And I actually set the car aside and we were building Swamp Rat 15 right here. This car's never run. This is hanging in the showroom in Summit in McDonough, Georgia, brand new. It's mine, but it's owned to them. Anyway, I've had this on the rack and I was just working on the body and my wife come out of the office and says, "What is that?" She knew what it was because she was, like I said, she was a comptroller. We hadn't received any deposits for chassis, right? We built chassis for a living. And I said, "Well, honey, that's my car for 1971. I said, "I ain't got down the drag strip in this engine car yet." I said, "Not in 2 weeks. I have to be in California at the AHRA Grand American." I said, "I'm under contract." She said, "You'd get back in one of these things after it's mutilated you like that?" I said, "Honey, it's what I do." She said, "Let me tell you something, Dawn." And she said, when she said Dawn, she got my attention. She said, "You got a good head on your shoulders, you got 2 good hands, and you got those 2 guys over there. They'll make anything you want." She's pointing over there to Swingle and TC. Here's TC, and that's Swingle right there. And she said, "You got all these machines, the stuff you see in there." And she said, "If there's anybody on this planet can make this car work and develop it, it's you. And if you forgot all your friends that were killed in the last 2 years," I'd lost 6 friends in these cars prior to this accident. "Do you know they haven't killed 6 since in 40-some years? And look how fast they go." Yeah. They get out of the wrecks at the end and say, "Thank you, Big Daddy." I've seen it on TV. Anyway, we went back to the track. It went off the drag strip again, just like always. Could have never developed it today because this drag strip at Bithlow had 100 feet of dirt from the edge of the pavement before you got to the guardrails. Of course, they wouldn't dare do that today because it'd get up so much speed, it'd go right through the guardrail, but we didn't have that kind of speed those days. That gave me some place to spin out. Today, you just hit the concrete wall, you hit it 2 or 3 times, and that'd be end of deal. So, coming back from the next day's test, I just kind of just sick over it all. And I said, if I didn't know better, I'd think the steering was too fast. But it can't be that because the steering is on this car just exactly the way it came off the slingshot. And Swingle says, "Gar, this ain't a slingshot. This is a front driver. If you think the steering's too fast, we'll just slow it down." So we slowed it down that night by making the arms longer on the spindles and shortening the little arm coming off the steering box. We didn't have rack and pinion yet. It was just a little box like from the slingshots. Went out there the next day. It was the most unbelievable thing. It went straight as a string right through the quarter mile, 6.86 seconds. And the Ram Chargers had their track record from 2 weeks before at a big meet that I didn't even go to because we didn't have a car, at 6.85. 100th of the Ram Chargers' best run for a championship event. And we didn't even have any nitro in it. We were running about 75% trying to get from point A to point B. We couldn't get in the trailer fast enough to get to California, and the rest is history. That was the Pomona, and then we beat Snake at Bakersfield for the U.S. Fuel and Gas Championships. We come back to Florida, we put a wing on it, still didn't have a wing. Come back to Florida, put the little wing on it, went down to West Palm Beach and won the big race down there and was a quarter of a second quicker than the entire field and 10 miles an hour faster. And at Indy that year, we went 6.21 seconds and the field was 660. And that's when I got stupid and when it wasn't going to stage first. Steve Carbone in the final said, if we never stage, I won't stage first. Well, we sat up there and I got all this heat built up, and I mean, that thing was ready to go. Finally, I staged, and it just spun the tires, and he won the race. So stupid, I could have went right up there and just drove away from him. This is Swamp Rat 12A. You'll see that in the other building where we're going right now with a body on the front of it. This car never really did anything. It's a short wheelbase car. Well, it's an experiment. We're all going Ira Litchi, Snively, they're all gone. This is what the place looked like when the family came in that bought the $25 worth of, I was working right there. No signs, no roads, but there was trailers out here, racing trailers, and they knew something was going on. Of course, there'd been some stuff in the magazines about I'd moved to Ocala. Here's the Schefter place. You'll see this car in the other building. Used to test in my driveway, had a 600-foot driveway.
Heck, I tested my driveway, it's only 130 feet.
Yeah. Here's TC, he's dead. There's Herb Parks, he's dead. Now here's my 300-mile-an-hour run at Indy, 303 in Gary Clapshaw's car, and that's when I decided to get my car out of storage, my Swamp Rat, and refurbish it. And I drove it 323, 4.76 seconds. Nice car. Here's actually outrunning the Budweiser car at Atlanta. You can see this is why it's still the most modern. This car has 2 square feet less frontal area than any dragster out there because I've moved the rear end in. And of course this acts as a rudder, so it holds it nice and straight when it goes 1-to-1 on the clutches, and you get just a little bit of tire spin. I want to do and I learned that driving Shirley Muldowney's car, 289 miles an hour. That's when I got the idea for all of this stuff. And then my wife, when I went for 323, my wife says, "Did you like that run?" I said, "Yes, I did." She said, "It's your last one." She says, "Look at my hands." I didn't know she had Parkinson's. So she said, "You're scaring me to death." And so I never drove it again. It's been in the building just the way it was. And then in 2008, Chrysler came out with these. We built 2 prototype cars like this. And they asked me to test one of them. So I went out to Denver and drove one, and Judy Lilly drove the other, and won the match race with her. I come home, and a couple of weeks later, my wife said over breakfast, "Did you enjoy the runs in the Superstock?" I said, "Yeah, it was a lot of fun." She says, "Well, why don't you get you one?" I said, "I thought it scared you." She says, "Those things only go 135 miles an hour. I said, "You walk faster than that." She says, "If you want one, get it." So I got number 1, 2009 001. And I had a lot of fun with it. And then when they came out with the 2011, I got that too. You'll see these cars over in the other building. And then, of course, there's the electric dragster, which are no pictures up here. We're going to put the pictures of the electric dragster over here, which is what I'm experimenting with now. And I hold the record at 185.60, 7.25 seconds on batteries. I'm trying to go 200 and in the 6s. So that's where that program is. You won't see that car here. It's down at the motor shop right now, down in Groveland. So we're going on over to my shop.
This don't look like electric to me. That's a new one?
I saw this on the internet.
Yeah.
This is Swamp Rat 12, the one I showed you the picture on the wall that never did anything. It's a short wheelbase experimental car. I came back from California in 1968 and sold it immediately to some kids with a Chevrolet engine. And we had a chassis shop, so we put all that in there for them. And they were local guys, and they ran it locally. In 1976, we formed the museum, And about the same time, these kids got off the drag strip in Tampa and bent the front end. So they brought it back to me to have a new front half put on it. And by then I was trying to retrieve all my cars, so I gave them the $500 credit on the wreckage and built them a nice new chassis, and they were tickled to death with that. So the car set till 1987. In 1987, I was up here, and we were building Swamp Rat 31. That's the wrecked one that's in the back of the building on the roller. And I had to go away for a couple of weeks, and the kid that was helping me, I didn't want him working on 31, so I asked him, I said, we'll bring this car over and I'll let you put a front half on it. Here's all the pattern. Just put it up in the jig and make all this just like you see it. So I come back from the trip, and it was all real nice. We moved it back over here, 1987. Set for 20 years. In 2007, Chrysler called me up and said, we've made a half a dozen 392 cubic inch late model Hemis. We're going to send you 3 of them, and we want you to build us a supercharged nitromethane late model Hemi to do some dyno work with. I said, well, I'll be happy to do that for you. I've been with Chrysler since '61. I still do some jobs for them. I said, well, I don't know about that dyno work in nitromethane. But anyway, I got on it. All this is handmade. All the blower manifold, all handmade right here in this shop. Nothing's been purchased. All the drive for the mag, we did all of that. Unfortunately, we had one of these covers back here to drive the fuel pump, because this motor doesn't have anything on it to drive anything. It's all electronic. So we got it all ready to go, and I called him up where he wanted it shipped to, and the guy says, well, Don, we've been thinking about that. We've done some investigation. We don't think we want to use that on the dyno. Do you have a car we could put it in and do some testing that way? I said, I have just the car. So I sent them a picture of it. It didn't have this nose on here, and they said, well, could we have a nose, because we want to do a National Chrysler commercial. I said, okay. So we built a nose piece, installed it in there, went down to Bradenton, did about 15 half passes, because it doesn't have the big 5-point cage, you know. And it run real well, ran good. Then we took it all apart and sent the engineers all the pistons and the rods and the rings and the valves and stuff, so they could see how it all handled the nitromethane, and it was good. They sent it all back, and we assemble it, and I use this as a cackle car. It goes around with me to the different events. I'm going to be taking it up north this summer. And what's so pretty about it, it's got that combustion chamber with those 2 squish areas. Have any of you seen the combustion chamber in these late model engines? It's not like a Hemi. It's got a flat spot on that side. And that spins the fuel and makes it burn real good. That gives them the mileage that they need, but it also causes the nice lean flames to stick out of it. It's a nice car. This is an old Woody. This is one of the last slingshots in '69. It's just before the accident at Long Beach, when I changed everything over to rear engine. See, the driver's sitting here looking over the injectors. Now, if you know the slingshots today that they use, that's how they are. They set up real high and look over the engine. And this is built in honor of Tom Lemons. He was building this car when he died of a heart attack. But he had a little garage in Highway 64 in Bixby, Oklahoma, and he was with me for 17 years. I knew him for 45, but he actually worked on the team for 17 years. And so we built this in his honor, and it's just about ready to be finished. I haven't put any nitro in it yet, but I got to set the barrel down. But it's getting close. But this is my personal shop where I work. Nobody else works out here but me. And that way I can have something. That's a Donovan.
Yeah, it's a
Aluminum Donovan. I'm getting ready to put it together. I have the heads and all back there. I'm still building. You'll see it when we get into the other building. I'm still building lots of display stuff. And, what we'll do when this is done is we'll have it for a tour line between the 2 buildings, and we bang it off for you. All right, we're going this way. This is the Jim and Allison Lee car found in Florida.
What are we looking at? Flowers? Oh, God.
Thank you.
The red car is Swap Rat 20. It's one of the few cars that I sold, but that was sold to Art Malone, who was a personal childhood friend. We went to school together from the 5th grade. He's dead now, and he come up here one weekend and says, I ought to have a car, I want to go fuel racing. What do you got? I said, well, I got that 73 car out there. I said, I might sell you that, but you got to sell it back to me. I don't want it to go to anybody else. So he ran it for a few years, and then when he got through with it, we got it back. So I'm going to probably sometime this year I'll put that together and finish it up. But I got so many cars in there anyway, and I don't really need another one in there. Maybe it's better right here with the story. These are a couple of Hemis off the water pumps down in Lake Okeechobee. I'm going to restore one and make it a real nice engine. And look at the size of the drive shafts to drive them water pumps. These engines move billions of gallons of water.
Coupling on in.
Yeah, I got 4 chains running. These are 1951 Hemis, 331s. Chrysler had been industrial engines for years, but this was their first attempt at V8s. And they they built a tremendous amount of industrial V8s. In the antique building, you'll see a couple. There's one on a siren in there, and there's one that was on a generator. You'll see that. Real nice, all nice running stuff. This will be nice running when I get done with it. And we're going to leave one just the way we got it, so you'll be able to see the before and the after.
Think it leaked oil?
It just, yeah, it rotted right out, didn't it? I can't imagine how that must be inside if there was that much water down inside of here. Okay,
Yeah.
let's head over here to my other garage.
Another Donovan?
This was our last project. This is the latest thing we built, finished.
They got them with 502 Chevys on them.
17. Steel body. I had this body for 30 years. The Arden, everybody, who knows what an Arden is?
Arden is overhead valves.
An Arden is a overhead valve conversion, Hemi heads for a flathead Ford. They made 200 sets. Arthur Duntoff, does that ring any bells to anybody? To Mr. Chevrolet. Him and his brother built the heads right after World War II. He didn't get them to New York until about mid-48, and by then Ford had introduced the F8 truck motor, the big Lincoln motor for the dump trucks and stuff, solved the problem. This was to cause the little flathead Ford engine that was 100 horse to make it 175 horse and run cool. Well, they couldn't sell them then because you could just buy your big F8 truck motor right in your dump truck. It wasn't for cars, it was for big trucks. Well, the Bell Auto Parts in California saw the advantage of the Hemi head for racing. So they bought whatever sets were left. We think probably maybe they disposed of about 10 sets before they actually fell into the hands of Bell Auto Parts. And they sold them to the racers, and they controlled all the racing records at the drags, the dry lakes, Muroc, Bonneville Salt Flats, and even a few of them ended up in sprint cars. The first one I ever saw was at Plant Field in Tampa as a sprint car. And that thing was hot lapping that place right with them little offies. It run good. And a Hemi head breed as well. Well, they controlled all the records in drag racing for a while, and then of course the overheads came out in 49 and 50, and they started running pretty good, and then these became obsolete because the engine's only got 3 mains. You know, you can only get so much power out of it, it tears up. Anyway, I ended up with 4 sets. This one makes about 300 horse in this chassis right here, and they're sweet running little things. They're sweethearts.
Yeah.
That one is a Bonneville one right there for Bonneville Racing, wide open, with a set of Hilbert injectors, which I've never seen Hilbert injectors for them. That's the only set I've ever seen for an Arden. And these are some engines and stuff that I built when my wife was real sick, and I just come down here in the daytime, and I had all this stuff in the Quonset hut, and I put it together. There's the engine now, the 32 Ford that's got the Buick in it. That's the 4-cylinder that was in there. We're going to make a real nice display out of that. That's a nice running engine. All these are good running engines. Here's the boat that Chrysler gave me when I won the 1966 AHRA Nationals. Nice little ski boat. This is my 44 replica of when I was a kid. This was my hot rod.
They were
All
affiliated with
this
somebody.
has got Chevy
I don't remember,
bumpers on
Chris
it.
Kraft or something.
49 Cadillac engine. The bumpers, running boards have been removed like an Auburn Speedster. And it's got the Cadillac tail fins and the the Lincoln Continental spare tire. And the fender skirts are really tricked. That was the experimental set of fender skirts that Buick had built back in the 30s by a guy named Jimmy Jones. And they wanted to see how they'd look on the Buicks, and they liked it, so then they made molds and made them. He kept his fender skirts, the experimental skirts. And they came up for a swap meet up in Pennsylvania, and I bought them. They're really tricked, all handmade stuff. It's a 32 Ford 3-window coupe of mine. I've had it for years. And this is the Murray body. They only made about 900 of them. Ford had Murray build these 3-window coupe bodies. They were experimenting to see how the coupe was going to go across. And of course, these bodies are real. These were coach builders that build these things. Ford paid a lot of money for these, and then after they got to close to 1,000, by then they had their dies made, and they made their own after that. But this got all the bracing, all the trick stuff in it, just superior craftsmanship to the production body that was later offered. They're very hard to find. I found this one in New Orleans. It didn't have a nick in it or a rust spot in it, and I gave the guy $10,000 just for the body in 1978. And to give you an idea how much that was in relationship to the price of the car, about 3 years later I got a call from Philadelphia, and the guy says, I know where there's a 32 3-window coupe up here, complete, low mileage, no rust, but it's apart. The old lady gave it to the grandson, and he took it all apart, and now he don't want it anymore. And they want $4,000. So I gave him $4,000, went up, and I like them that way. You can lay it all out and see what you get. I gave $10,000 for just the body and the garnish moldings, and $4,000 for our complete car. And that complete car is in the building. That's the black 3-window coupe in the antique building. And I was always going to make one because I had a nice 32 Ford V8 that came out of my Roadster in 1976, and I kept the engine. The car's long gone. I actually traded it for the Andy Granatelli Plymouth, that FIA record holder Plymouth. That's the only way I could get it. Got one of my 32 Ford. So I had this body then. I didn't know what to do with it, and I was always thinking about making a nice 3-window coupe body. But then I got the one from Philadelphia, and I decided to make a street rod out of this one. Got about 11,000 miles on it. I've had a lot of fun with it.
What
These
size
are
is the
my
motor in it, Don?
Two stalkers.
What size is the motor?
That's a 354 cubic inch, 1956 Chrysler with the aluminum heads. There's aluminum heads that are made by, what's the guy's name, up in the Carolinas. They're nice heads. These are my two super stocks in 2009. You can see I've been to quite a few national events with it. And I've only been to one with this one. By the time I got this one, my wife had his spinal cord injury foundation. And it was that gave me the idea to build an electric dragster. The guy that built this car and the guy that built the two basically exonerated golf carts, I talked to him, Mike Geary. I said, how fast do you think we could go in an electric dragster? He said, oh, we ought to be able to go 200 easy. Well, it wasn't as easy as we thought. Like I say, I've reached 185.6 in 7.25 seconds, but I'm still on it. I have been 705, but not for the record. The backup run for that, the motor's quit. We have motor trouble. When you put that much voltage into them all at once, the brushes get trouble. We're building special induction motors like they have in diesel locomotives, where they have to put a lot of voltage to move the mass. And these special induction motors will be able to take that. We ought to be able to run 225 once we get those motors built, but they're being built in Wisconsin. There's the car you saw the picture of on the wall that I was testing at Sefner. That's Swamp Rat 28A. The B has the helicopter motor in it in the other building, in the dragster building. Over here we have some engines that are interesting. This is Ford's first V8. 1932. This came out of my Roadster in 1978. 60 horse is all it makes. But don't confuse that with the 60 horse Ford of later years. There's one of those down there. That's a little motor. We used to call them watch fault motors. This is the same size as the 85 and the V8, the 100 horse, the three 239s, but just smaller boards, 221 cubic inches. But you can see very quiet. All of these engines are the same. They don't have any bumpers on them. Just running around on these motorcycles. That's 60 horse. All I'm saying. They only made this engine 1 year, and then 33s were 85 horse. But the compression ratio's got 7/8 spark plugs, tall water pumps, tall coil, a single throat carburetor, aluminum oil pan. There's a lot of things that they were able to figure out how to make the engine cheaper for production and still have more power. So the 33 was a lot less expensive to manufacture and made 85 horse. They basically got that horsepower from the 2-barrel carburetor and the higher compression heads. Then we move over here. You can come in here if you like, and you walk right in. This is the last one. This is 1953. This is 110 horse, 239 cubic inches. And this was the beginning, this was the end of the flathead. Oh, there's a little choke there. A dyno to know that that's a lot more powerful than that one. But that's exactly the same exhaust. And then we have the Arden. Now this is the same engine here, 239 cubic inches as here, but it's got the Arden kit, and this was a brand new kit, the only one I'd ever seen. It was still in the box when I got it. Paid the whopping sum of $1,500 for that kit. They were going for about $500 a kit at the time. But this was brand new, and it had all the accessories, all the little exhaust manifolds, everything. This is what you would have got if you bought it back in 1948. So I had to pay $1,500 for it. Today, I could easily get $30,000 for that kit because they are so rare and so sought after. And you can tell when this runs that this makes about 175 horse versus the 100 horse that it originally was. And you notice you get a little smoke because that's from the oil going by the valve stems. I have it nice and loose because it don't get run much. We don't put any seals on engines like this because they set up so much. You'd have seizures on the valve stem. So I don't care about the little smoke. Let the lubrication be in there because they just get run like you see them right here. Then you come down here and you see a full race 1950 Ford Flathead. This would be the ultimate. This is streetable. This could be in your 50 Ford. And this makes about the same horse as the Arden. That's what I had in my 50 Ford just before I put it into the little 36 Ford coupe, which you see that in the other building. But this is the kind of engine I had in. It's got nice camshaft, 3 carburetors, the Offenhauser heads, the Fenton cast iron mount. This was the ultimate street. The only difference here between then and now, it'd have been 6 volts and it'd have been a generator. And you'd have to set it over to the side, where it's so nice to be able to put the alternators right up here like that. And this is the same exact engine, but the 48 style with the water coming out of the center. But this is all Navarro stuff. And I personally got all these Navarro pieces from Barney Navarro before he died. I was personal friends with him. He really made some nice parts. Then we'll go all the way down to the end down here, and we'll see another version of the 50 Ford.
No bootleggers come over here, Don?
What's that?
No bootleggers wanted them motors?
And these are also Navarro heads, and Barney made these for me special before he died. These are low compression for a supercharger. And I was always looking for a supercharger, and not too long ago I found this one in Canada. And boy, this is a nice unit here. Got a big 4-barrel manifold on it. That'll make about 200 horse, nice and reliable.
How much boost?
About 7-8 pounds. Yeah, not much more than that. Over here we have, this is the first 426 engine car. Boy, did I have some trouble with that thing. Well, I was running the 392s and I just won Bakersfield. Now I had this car at Bakersfield, but Connie Swingle was driving it. And he won the consolation race that they had on Sunday just for the guys that didn't make this show. But I won the big race, all 64 cars, a 64 car field. You know, think of that in Top Fuel today, 64, takes 6 rounds. Anyway, I come back from California for that, and my boss at Chrysler, I told you I'd been with them since '61. They said, Don, we don't make 392 engines anymore. We make 426 Hemis. We want you in the 426 Hemi. So I put the signs on it, Winds Charger, and not Swap Rat 8, which I have now. And I took it out on tour, and I mean, I couldn't do nothing. It all came to a head at National Trails Raceway in Columbus. Everybody know where that is?
Oh, yeah.
Clark Rader was running the place. And he was a kind of gruff old guy, you know. And I went out there for a match race with Jim and Allison Lee, and I won the race. And but I only went 192 miles an hour, about 814, something like that, which was good for the car. But remember now that my 392 had been running over 200 every place when Frank Wiley at Chrysler said, get into the 426. And I had never went 200 with this engine. And Went up to get paid. I won the race, but only went 192. Went up to get paid, and Clark Rader was sitting up there under his desk, and that big moose over his head. I don't know was anybody ever in his office and saw that? He had a big moose that he'd killed, and that was right over his head. It was an awesome sight. And he had a 45 service pistol, 45 automatic service pistol laying up there by the money, and he slid $500 across the desk to me, put his hand on the service pistol, finger right on the trigger, just slid it over on the desk and pointed it straight at me. He owed me $12.50. I'd made all three. Here's $500 you laid down on me tonight. I said, what are you talking about, Mr. Rader? He said, I advertised 200 and you went 192. I said, well, and then I made a terrible mistake. I said, well, sometimes the tracks aren't good enough. There's nothing wrong with my track, and his hand was shaking on that pistol. That damn thing. You know, I had a 45 service pistol in the military. It knocks you down. It just puts a guy right on the ground when around, even if it just hits him in the arm. And I mean, it scared me. He said, I advertised 200, and you come in here and laid 192. You're saving it for the match race tomorrow in Rockford, Illinois. Now take your $500 and get out of here and don't ever come back. Oh my God. So we drove over to Rockford, and I was just completely livid. I said this, and I hadn't been running like I had been running with the 392. So I told my boys, I said, I'm just going to blow it up tomorrow and tow home and get the 392, and the Chrysler deal can go away. And the guy, my crew guy says, the kid's just helping me. They said, what are you going to do to it? I said, I'm going to put some spark lead into it. We've been running 35 degrees. Well, that wasn't enough for that great big chamber. So you had a 200 cc chamber, and it wasn't enough spark lead. We didn't know that. So we've been running like 34 degrees in the 392. That's all you put in. I've got a little small 110 cc chamber. So I put it up to 40 degrees, which would be the end of your 392. It'd break every cylinder wall. That thing went down through there 214 miles an hour. Oh my God. I come back, I run up to the tower. I said, I hope you saved that. I want to see that on the clocks. Oh no, we just clicked that off. We knew it was a good run, but we didn't think you needed it. Here's the time card. I said, if it does anything like that again, save it. And I told the boys, I said, get the pan off of that thing. It probably needs bearings and everything, you know. It runs so hard. We pulled the pan down, and the oil, we didn't even have to change oil. It was perfect. There was no bearings hurt. There was nothing. It was brand new. Well, we put that all back together, and I said, 40 degrees, I'll just give it 50.
Fire in next cylinder.
50 degrees, 219 miles an hour. It was a shot heard around the world. In fact, I mean, it put people into the 426s. Well, Radar called me up on the phone at home when we got home. He said, "You son of a bitch," he says, "I didn't need 219 miles an hour. If you'd have just went 200 for me, it'd have been good." And I tried to explain to him that I just discovered what the problem was. He wouldn't want to hear it. He just hung the phone up. So anyway, that was the story on this car. And then we later made a long model, which is 10 in there. This is Swamp Rat 8. That was the beginning of the 426. Over here we have this is the beginning of the Swamp Rat 1. This is how it looked when it went to the track the very first time at Brooksville. In 1956, 354 cubic inches, gasoline, still has the Chrysler 300 manifold on it with the big Rochester carburetors, and 2-speed transmission, and this went 128 miles an hour. And then this is the same car, the way it looked when it went out of service. Both of these are recreations. This is how it looked going out of service. This had been 204 miles an hour, and won a lot of races. It was the longest car in service. It went out in 62, came online in 56. And when we actually restored the real car, we put it back the way it looked in 1958 when it went 180. And you see that in the building. That original car is, as you come in the door, that's the one right around the corner. That's the original. And then since then, it's all based on a 31 Chevy frame rail. So every time we find a set of 31 Chevy frame rails, we recreate it in a different configuration. It had about 12 configurations, and we just did the way it looked when it went 176, the first car over 170, and that car's on loan to the museum in Florida, the Florida History Museum. We just put that up there in Tallahassee a couple of weeks ago. It'll come back in July. And when we get it, then we'll put it right in here. We'll just kind of keep them in here because it's kind of nice. This is the way the car looked when I got burned so bad. And you can see that there's no windshield. I was driving it with my bare hands, and all I had was goggles. And the fire, there's a picture of the fire in the trailer. I should have showed that to you guys. It was just all just engulfed in flames. It was at Chester, South Carolina. Not a nice day. All of the innovations in the sport weren't racing. These are the guys that came up with big trailer. They had this when Perdome and Garlits and the Greek had the little single axle tag-alongs. And they showed up at Union Grove with this big old trailer, and we all just had a big horse laugh. And I'll never forget this. Ruffalo came to me and said, "You can laugh if you want to, Big Daddy," he said, "but the day will come when you'll have them and everybody else will have them just like this." Boy, was he ever right. Not only just like this, but bigger even. Yeah. But up to that point, we didn't do much work on the cars at the drag strip. We mostly fixed the car at home and then took it to the race and raced it. We never even pulled the pans down. But these guys wanted to be able, it's got everything. It's got air compressors, a generator for lights, the big rollout toolboxes. These guys had a lot of money. There's $75,000 worth of gold plating on this engine and parts and those wheels on that truck. And gold was $140 an ounce. And that's what saved it. Because they always thought they'd reclaim that gold. You know, you can reverse the process and put it back into the tanks, and they know how much is going in there. And so they never sold it. Plus they had money besides. Naturally, they had money to be able to do this. The car, there's a couple of things about it. It has this gets nice clean air. That was, and today they just put the scoops way up here to get the clean air. And it also got all kinds of things. Got the big front wing. This was way ahead of its time. Plus they scoop air up here to help hold the front end down. But they didn't do anything dragster wise. This is their contribution. And 10 years ago, Mr. Fullo called me up, and he also builds those special fiberglass racing bike wheels. That's his hobby. And he said, "You remember the gold dragster from Union Grove?" I said, yeah. I said, "I ate a lot of crow on that one." He said, "Would you like to have it for the museum?" I said, "You still got it?" Yep, I still got it. Never got rid of it. We'll bring it down there to you if you want it. So they brought it down here, and we had it in the other building. 2 years ago, now it's almost 3 now, he called me up. He said, "You know, we still got that nice tow truck with the gold wheels on it." I said, "You have?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "You know, we was going to paint it black and sell it." And he said, "I took it down to the paint shop, and I told the guy to get these signs off, and the kid comes out there with the DA sander and just starts to sand on the truck, and he said, 'Stop! I can't stand it.'" He'd had it in this big warehouse in Wisconsin, I think in Racine is where they were from. And he said he'd had it in this air-conditioned warehouse all the time, and he'd come out there to take the signs off of it, and they just couldn't stand it. And it's got a lot of special stuff. All this fifth wheel and everything in here was before, that's all homemade stuff. In other words, this was before you just bought the fifth wheel trailer hitch stuff. So he said, you can have that truck if you want it. I said, sure, send it down. So we had it over in the antique building because it is kind of pretty, you know, with all the gold wheels on it. And then we built this building. And a picture appeared somewhere in a magazine that Garlits had built this great big building for his special stuff. And the guy calls me up, he says, you know, I still got that big trailer that you had that laugh over. I said, no. He said, in fact, it's still got all the tools and the spare parts in it, just like when we stopped racing in '75. What? He said, yeah, it's all been in that warehouse. And he says, we'll give you all of it if you put it in that big building so that it stays out of the weather. It's been in an air-conditioned building all these years. I said, oh my God. He said, well, we'll have to come down and either get the truck or get the hitch out of it because it's the only thing that'll tow it. So they came down and actually took the hitch out of this truck so as this truck wouldn't have to go out on the road. They had a guy bring it down with the hitch in his truck, and then they put the hitch back in this truck. Unbelievable. But it shows you that all of the innovations in the sport weren't about racing. That a lot of it was to do with these, you know, making it easier to work on your car. They were really ahead of their time. I mean, this would just be a sportsman trailer today. But it's got a lot of stuff in there, a lot of tools. It's all in there just like when they raced, the spare parts, everything. They didn't take nothing out of it.
It's for the son I'm doing. Yeah. It is amazing.
Boy, can you imagine the knowledge in that man's head? Not only just the engines and what goes on now he's into electric racing. Once you go over 200, he talks like he still wants to go 200 mile an hour.
Yeah.
And race it himself.
What's her name?
Jim Morningstar.
Nice to meet you. I'm Dan.
Nice to meet you, Dan. We just come down, my wife and I come down from Dayton, Ohio, just to see my brother, and we're going to Garlits. I said, let's go. We're big into cars anyway, so.
Yeah. It's been about over a decade since I've been here. I was just a kid, you know, so coming here again
Pretty
brings
cool.
back a lot of memories. You know?
Oh, yeah. Does he look similar? Just a little older?
With the beard, it makes him look different.
Yeah.
That's his girlfriend.
Who is it?
Yeah, that's his fiance.
That's his fiance?
Really?
Yeah,
50-year-old fiance.
would anybody, she takes photography. Would anybody like an 8x10 like over there by the Roadster or one of the cars? She can take the picture. They're $20, 8x10 color.
We print it out in any size.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll send it out.
While she does that, I'll tell you. Does anybody here know who Smokey Unique was?
Yeah.
Good. You want to hear a Smokey story?
Absolutely.
All right. Smokey and I were the best of friends. He didn't have a son, and I was like the guy. And he met me when I beat the Californians. I went to California and run Riverside in 1959 and won the race. Open trailer, 50 Cadillac towing the Swamp Rat one that looked just like the one with the blower on it, and went over to Smokey's to see, because I was running Giovanni Cam, so I went over to Smokey's because Giovanni's going to show us off, you know. And Smokey come out there and walked around that thing. He said, "You beat the Californians with this?" He says, "Where's the tow car?" I said, "Well, this is the 50 Cadillac." He says, "Where are the tools?" I opened the trunk, and there's a toolbox in there and a short block assembly. He says, "You went to California and beat those guys with this?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You got to have a better tow vehicle. Wait right here." Now imagine, I've just been introduced to the man. He goes in, he had some serious clout with General Motors, which you'll hear about that in a minute. He goes in, he makes a phone call, he comes back out, he says, here's a guy's name, Flint, Michigan, and here's his telephone number. He said, you and Art get in the Cadillac and run up there to Flint. There's a brand new GMC carryall waiting for you in your name. Wow. I went up there, it was a black and white carryall. Me and Smokey was friends for life, obviously. So when he knew he was going to die a number of years before he actually passed. He'd been given the death sentence. So he was liquidating his stuff, and he hated NASCAR because they constantly were on his back, you know. I mean, he did all kinds of things. Remember the story of the gas line that twirled all underneath the car that held 5 full gallons? And there was no rule about that, see? And I got his gasoline machine that he made his own gas with and made NASCAR supply the gas because they couldn't make gas like he could make it. And I got his dyno that did all the dyno work. And I got the Chevy small block, the one Darlington in 55. I got the Hudson Hornet, the one in 54. I got the shotgun motor that AJ Foyt won Milwaukee in 69. I got the Crosley engine that won Sebring on the first Sebring race. Yeah, me and Smokey was good friends. There's no question about it. But he never told me about this thing. This was his super secret in his back room. The smoke run, he called it. This is a dyno that is driven by an electric 200 horse motor. It'll turn the NASCAR engine up to 85, 9,000 RPM and measures the power that it takes to turn that motor wide open throttle with the ignition off. Sucking the air through here, running the oil through the filter. This is where the lightweight oils were developed. This is where the big filters were developed. This is where the big air cleaners were developed. Smokey would hunt for a half a horse improvement. And his motors really did well. And nobody knew he was doing it. There was nothing illegal about it. He was making the motor easier to turn. This is where they developed the 2-ring pistons. This was the machine that did all of that first work. But he never told me a word about it. Because I guess he's afraid I'd tell somebody. Anyway, he gave it to the University of Central Florida. And they worked with it. Anyway, a guy came through here a few years ago and saw all the Smokey stuff, and he was a big Smokey fan. He knew about this thing, and he says, "Big Daddy, where's the smoke run?" I said, "What's that?" He said, "You know, you say you're really good friends with Smokey and you know what the smoke run is?" I said, "I never heard of that." And he told me what I just told you about how he built it himself and was hidden in his room over at Daytona in his big complex. So it wasn't a month later I got a phone call from Central Florida University. One of the professors said, "We've been down to your museum and we saw all the Smokey stuff that you got. How would you like to have the smoke run?" I said, "Oh my God, you got it? Yeah, we're not going to do classes on it anymore." But by now, all the teams had them, you know, where they could do the same thing. And he said, "We're going to give this one up." And he said, "We've done an investigation. You're a nonprofit. We can give it to you, and there's no problem." So I went down and got it, and here it is. I was going to make it run, but it's 440 volts. I called the electric company and I told them, "I got to get 440 volts out here." They said, "Big Daddy, what concoction are you coming up with now?" And I told them, they said, "How much are you going to use that?" I said, "Well, I'll start it up once or twice a week, maybe." They said, "We're not going to put a big pole and a big transformer out there for you to start something once or twice a week." So I guess that's all it's ever going to be. But he is so funny. He was I call the word is cantankerous. He had an auction over there toward the end when he was getting rid of all his stuff. And he had one of the 3 aluminum hemispherical head small block Chevys that General Motors had built. They had one on the proving grounds, hot lapping the place. They had one in their dyno banks, and they sent one to Smokey for evaluation. He took it all apart, checked all the clearances, put it all back together, did some pulls on the dyno, took it all apart, looked at it, and said, you guys can just forget this project. This is nothing but a piece of crap. He said it won't last. And so they just dropped the whole project. But Smokey's deal was, if he did anything to the engines or anything, they were his after that. Like if you built you a NASCAR engine, when you won the race, he got it back. So he could look at it. And he had a room half the size of this over there that was just engines stacked on the floor of all the different races that had been won with his motors. Then he got them back. That way he could take them apart, look at them, and see what improvements could be made for the next one. So he had this small block Chevy, and they had this big no reserve auction over there in Daytona. They're going to sell everything. And this on Friday morning. Now this isn't like the Barrett Jacksons where the big shooters are all got free alcohol all they want. You know, have you ever been to any of those auctions? Yep. I just come from the Macomb down there, and they got the special area for the big shooters, and all the drinks are free and everything. You know, they really get going, and they pay a lot of money for stuff. He didn't have that. This was a straight up auction, and they got to the small block Chevy on Friday. And I'll never forget it. The auctioneer, they got to 40,000. The auctioneer says, I got 40,000, I hear 41,000. This is the only time you'll ever see this engine. The only other two are in the hands of General Motors, and they'll never turn them loose. Do I hear 41,000? I got 40,000. I'm going to sell this engine now. This is the only one. It's aluminum head, Hemi, small block Chevy. Do I hear 41,000? I'm going to sell the engine, going twice for 40,000. And Smokey stepped up on the stage and the guys and took the gavel and he pointed it out there. And I'll never forget, he said, "You sons of bitches." That was his favorite saying. Don't want to buy nothing. This auction is over. Everybody go home. Oh, can you imagine such a thing? They'd come from all over the world. And he went in the office, and it's rumored, nobody knows for sure, and the daughter never would tell me, it's rumored he wrote a check to the auction company for $125,000 because they had spent $65,000 advertising. He just wrote him a $125,000 check. I guess he was quite wealthy. And I never did figure out where the Chevy went, whether it actually went, the guy might have got it at the 40,000, but I don't know, I never saw it again. But anyway, all that stuff then, that he had his one daughter. He had a trophy wife too, a younger wife, because his original wife had died early. And she went down to West Palm Beach with a big condo and millions. But the daughter got all the property and all the stuff, and she did well. She sold it a piece at a time. But a funny story about that is, I get the phone call rings one day, and it's her name's Trish. And she says, "Mr. Garlits," she says, "you need to come over and get that great big glass beater that my dad's got in the back room. He wanted you to have it. You need to come on over and bring a big trailer. It's big. I have it in the back room back there." He left her a note on the back of a business envelope, and it said, "Trish, see to it that Don Garlits gets the big glass beater in the back room when I die. He always liked it so much. Dad." That thing's worth, she could have got $5,000 or $6,000 for it easy. It's really nice. But she didn't do that. She wanted to carry out her dad's wishes. And you know, I have a lot of respect for a person like that, because most people just put that thing up, call it the trash can, you know, another $5,000 to be sold. And I have it, and it's so neat because every time I go back, I use it all the time. You can put a whole Ford fender in it. He had it made special, big cabinet, you know. Anyway, he was quite a guy, and because there's no ladies here, I can tell this one. I used to do the PRI shows with him for nothing. I just fly up and do them. Did any of you ever been to the PRI show? Well, that's a performance industry, and they have it was in Florida for a few years, but it's in Indy. That's where it originated, and then they built a nice big building. They went back to Indy, and I would go up there for the breakfast, and we would he'd have a panel I've sat with A.J. Foyt, Parnelli Jones, Mario Andretti, Don Perdomo. We'd be up there in front, and he'd MC it from the stage. And they'd say, this question's for Don Perdomo, or this question's for Don Garlits, and they'd answer them, and then we had a little hand mic, we'd tell the answer. And they would be a sellout for the breakfast, and that was the object of it, because they made money on that. And then it would entertain all the people. I'll never forget this one lady stood up. This was a number of years before he died, and he had the new wife, Margie, big, beautiful blonde, big buxom thing, She's sitting down there on the front row, and this old lady stands up in the back and says, "Smokey, this question's for you." Says, "I want to know what a good-looking woman like that Margie there sees in an old fart like you. You could have heard a pin drop." And Smokey says, "I'll tell you what, ma'am," says, "you come on up here." There was a little backdrop on the stage, you know how they have a curtain back there? Says, "You come on up here, ma'am, and we'll step behind this backdrop and I'll show you what she sees." And she had actually got up out of her chair. Then she, I mean, he laughed for 2 minutes.
Oh, good.
Anyway, I miss him. He was a super guy, and smart. Oh my God! And he worked on all. He didn't break the rules. He worked outside the rules.
Stretched them.
Like the gas line that twirled under the car that held the 5 gallons. There was no rule about the size of the gas line. The tank had to be so big. And I'll never forget that. They had the tank out of the car. He'd won the race and hadn't made enough stops. And they knew there was no way to get that kind of mileage. So they took the gas tank out of the car and had it in the inspection thing, and they're there 4 or 5 hours. They're in it and measuring it and everything. It's a right size. And Smokey says, "Do you mind if we take the car back to the garages? How long y'all going to be?" He said, "We're going to be here till we find out how you did it." He said, "Do you mind if I take the car back to the garage?" "Go ahead and take the car back to the garage. We've already looked at it." They got in and drove it back to the garage. That was it. Cat was out of the bag. They had plenty of gas in the gas line to get back to the garage. And then, he made the car, he's the one that caused them to have templates that they put the car, because he made one just like, I think it was 1/10 of a size smaller. The whole thing. Now they have a template they put over it there to make sure it's the right size. All right, anybody like a picture, we'll get over here behind my little. And I'm normally a fuel guy. And I'd made it real light. I had a lot of trouble. I was breaking axles and doing all kind of, and they started making fun of me. And they started off by saying, "Well, there's Daddy Garlits." I had my little girls were just toddlers. The girl that's in the office there, Donna, that runs this place, was 1.5 years old. And they were hanging around the trailer, and they were saying, "Oh, there's Daddy Garlits. He's made another run. He's over the hill. He can't compete with us young guys anymore." They were in their early 20s, for gas. It's like sportsmen, racers. The fuel guys were running AHRA, UDRA, and all of those associations. Connie Coletta come over and says, "Would you drive my bounty hunter?" That's the one that's in there. "Would you drive my bounty hunter? It's doing something funny, and I can't tell what it is." We were just there now with our wives. They're driving the push trucks. And he had his son Scott, and I had the 2 girls with me. But no crew. Nobody's helping us. We're by ourselves. He said, "If you drive it and I can listen to it, maybe I can find out what's wrong." Well, I was 100 pounds lighter than him. I weighed about 110 pounds. And he was almost 200. Car goes down through there, 180.36 new world record for gasoline. The record was 180.00 by Tommy Ivo's twin engine, the very one that's in there. And the announcer, Bernie Partridge, says, no scoreboards or nothing. The only thing you're going to know is what the announcer says. Bernie says, well, we're going to have to call him Big Daddy from now on. Says, he's just set the world record, folks. The new world. And everybody's saying, what's the time?